Okay, so as promised, some tips for Mythic Gorefiend, the Guild Breaker. There are two bosses in Hellfire Citadel that are noticeable for causing guilds massive problems. Gorefiend is the first of them. Manaroth arguably is the other one, although Manaroth being the penultimate boss, you know, people would expect it to be very difficult. Gorefiend takes people by surprise because you do the first 5 bosses and, you know, some of those 5 are easier than others, but you get to Gorefiend and not only is it a massive step up, but what I think a lot of guilds and people find frustrating is that once you get past Gorefiend, the next few bosses are a lot easier. This is really a very tough boss early on. And I start to think about why is that? Because any boss, once you've done it and once you've done the progress and you've killed it a few times, you start to wonder why you ever had trouble with it. And then you think, you compare it with other bosses, and I think the issue with Gorefiend is that there are certain mechanics that you have to get right, but they don't target everyone. Like, you know, there are a lot of bosses where there are mechanics that you have to get right, but you practice it. You know, each time you pull, you will get practice on it. In Gorefiend, there are some things like Doom, for example. You might not get Doom. You might pull this thing 50 times without ever getting Doom. It's probably unlikely, but it's possible. Same thing with Death. You know, you might not get marked for Death for a long time, and then when you do, you've got to do it in that. So you can have like 20 pulls on this and start to think you're making progress. Then all of a sudden, someone gets hit by a mechanic that they haven't personally experienced, and the raid does badly because maybe they don't deal with it brilliantly. So that's one possibility. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through. Obviously, I'm going to go through the mythic specific. I am assuming you know the heroic mechanics, but I'm also going to show a bit of awareness that some heroic mechanics, if you don't deal with them perfectly, you'll cock them up. Okay, and you can't get away with it in Mythic. So what I'm going to do is just go through the abilities and see what we come across there. So the first of the Mythic only abilities, and by far the most important to bear in mind, is that when you die, whether you die because you die or whether you get targeted for death, when you go into the stomach, you will leave behind a corrupted soul, which is an attackable version of yourself. Now, when you go inside on normal and heroic, it's up to you to keep an eye on your timer and then escape by going into the middle to get back out again. No. You will not get out until you are broken. Your soul is destroyed on the outside, the corrupted soul. So there's a balance here. If you are broken out too early, if people just go ham and AoE the crap out of everything and then break the souls out too early, you won't have been able to do enough damage inside the stomach, which means adds. By the way, when you are in the stomach and there's a lot of adds there, it's better to get several of them down to like half health than kill one and leave another one on full health to get out, because that's really bad. But if you're broken out too early, it means you can't do much damage inside, which means you've got adds coming out on full health or very high health, which means, of course, it takes longer to kill those, which means you're getting more adds up at any one time, doing lots of damage, potentially killing people, especially the fixate ones, the constructs that attack and insta-kill people when they reach them. All of this sort of thing is the number one reasons why guilds wipe. I look at logs of guilds in the first few nights, and absolutely what you see is people wiping consistently after about a minute because of this. So you can't break them out too early. At the same time, you can't break them out too late, because then you get digested. That's an insta-kill. So ideally, you need to be breaking them out with about 5 seconds left to go. Now, we are helped in this. Used to get 30 seconds on the debuff before you'd be digested. Now it's 35. So that's a bit more, it gives you a bit more of a margin for there. But what you need is you need to assign people to finish breaking people out. It's okay a few other people just picking away at little bits of health on the souls, as long as you don't get them down below a certain amount. And then once they're down to, let's say, about 20%, just as a rough ballpark figure, you must allow the people who are assigned to breaking them out to break them out. Warriors are pretty good for this because of execute. Death Knights are decent as well. But this is the thing you've got to practice. Almost doesn't matter what anyone else does. You've got to practice allowing the people who are going to be breaking them out, and of course they need to be the first people to die. You start off by killing yourself at the start, to make sure that you're straight out. But they need to be practicing breaking you out at just the right time, and everyone else needs to leave them alone when they're down to low health. You absolutely cannot let any dots stray or anything like that. The other point to note is that when you do get your mark, your touch of death thing, you can't just be where you are. Like on heroic and normal, you would just stand where you naturally happen to be, because it doesn't matter, because you're going to get yourself back out. Here it matters. You can't just be stood where you are. You've got to make sure that you stand. There'll be a mark put down, or maybe 2 marks in the middle of the room. You've got to make sure, and you've got about 6 seconds to do it, you get yourself there. Remember, if there's an essence out firing shadow bolts, you might be slowed as well, so don't leave it to the last second. Get straight there, stood right on the mark. Then the people who are breaking you out know you are. If something goes wrong and you die not on that mark, it is also important that you call out over comms where you are, so that they know. Gives them half a chance. You're making it much more difficult if you do that, and again increasing the chances of a wipe eventually, but at least provide that information to give yourself half a chance. Okay? But this is the thing to practice. This is absolute the difference between succeeding and failing on this fight. Getting this right, and all of a sudden the rest of the fight looks a lot better, because as I say, getting this wrong causes snowball effects, and that's why you see so many wipes in the first few nights of just like a minute, because it's this that does it. Okay, so Touch of Doom is the next sort of debuff that could sort of scream at you. Obviously what you have to do with this one, if you get it really early on, you need to get it out to the sides of the room and right to the sides of the room, well out of the way, because this does damage to people. Stop on. One common error with this one, and I think lots of people have done it, I've certainly done it, is to get Touch of Doom but think you've got the sort of Shadow of Death debuff, and you stand on the mark where you'd go to die, and then you suddenly drop a Doom well. Try and avoid that. You need to try and come up with some sort of warning that will allow you to distinguish between the two, because that's fairly common that happens. And then the opposite happens sometimes, when you get Shadow of Death and you think you've got Touch of Doom, and you take it out to the side of the room, and all of a sudden that's where you are, and you've got to call out for people that's where you are, but you're stood in the middle of a Doom well. But there you go. So yeah, one tip I would definitely give, and I've fallen foul of this, is make sure that you are able to distinguish between having the Death debuff, Touch of Death, sorry, Shadow of Death, and the Touch of Doom, so that you know where you're going. Are you going to stand on the mark because you're about to get sucked into his belly, or are you going to go out to the sides of the room because you're about to drop a Doom well? Don't want to drop a Doom well in the middle. Don't want to shove yourself out to the outsides if that's where your soul's going to appear. Last little tip on this: if there's already a few touches of Doom wells around the edge of the room, when you drop your Doom well, it's preferable if you can actually drop it on top of another one. So what I would advise you to do, it doesn't actually do hideous amounts of damage if you're just in for a second, especially if you've got a cooldown, a defensive cooldown. Don't do this on low health, or where there's an essence cast in freely. But what you can do is get yourself quickly to the edge of a Doom well that's already well placed, wait for a second to go on the debuff, and then just move out and just run across it, and you will drop your Doom well on top of the other Doom well. Save space, because the problem is towards the end of a fight, if people are always trying to drop their Doom well in clear space, you find yourself being encroached, and you get lots of Doom wells, and they start to creep in towards the middle area of the room, which is where people are standing. So definitely bear that one in mind. Now, when ads do come on the outside, the general priority system is this: the Gorebound Spirit is for melee. It needs to be, it'll do a little charge, the tank needs to taunt it, get it, at the front where the boss is. Melee needs to be on that. It does a bellowing roar that needs to be interrupted, but essentially it's melee's job to be on that. Gorebound constructs, I'm going to get the names wrong here, but the constructs are the ones that fixate onto a ranged player. They mustn't reach that ranged player. You do get a couple of seconds before it does anything, and it draws a line to you. So if you're a ranged player and you've got this line on you, keep an eye where it is. If it's right at the other end of the room, okay, fine, but keep an eye on it. If it's not, move. Move away. Do not let this thing get you. Not only will it kill you, but the explosion that occurs when it does that will also probably kill other people who are trying to attack it if they're close by. Now that brings me on to this next point, because although the call may go out for melee to attack these constructs as well, you have to be very careful, because if you are just chasing mindlessly after them and going through a load of people, bear in mind these abilities, which are heroic abilities, which means that you can get an awful lot of splash damage occurring from something like Surging Shadows. All right, that you know, shadow magic that inflicts 80,000 shadow damage to anyone within 5 yards of you. So if you're chasing through the ranged camp, there's a load of melee together, you're going to be splashing quite a lot of damage. So that's why it's generally not a good idea for melee to go running after these things. Ranged need to be on these constructs. But absolutely top priority, of course, are the essences. These fire out AoE shadow bolts. They're going to slow you down, do all sorts of crap. They need to be burnt immediately. These are the ones that are the healing targets inside the stomach. It's why it's important for healers to heal them up as much as they can, so they come out with as little health as possible. They should ideally die within a second. But again, that can cause a problem as well. Sometimes you see an essence come up with hardly any health, and a caster thinks, oh, it'll take so long to cast a spell, and it will be dead before it goes off, so I'll ignore it, I'll leave it to someone else. This is a classic fight for wiping because people are leaving jobs to someone else. Target it, attack it. If it dies before your cast gets off, oh dear, too bad. Okay? But if everyone starts thinking like you do, these things are going to be up, it's going to be firing these shadow bolts off, it's going to be killing people, slowing people down, which has a knock-on effect of killing people who need to move to somewhere really quickly. Kill them immediately, then kill constructs. The boss outside of Feast is lowest priority. In fact, to be honest, even in Feast, it's lowest priority. The boss is always last priority for DPSing. Yes, DPS it when there's nothing else there, but when there is something else there, that's what you attack. So for range, the priority is essences, constructs, then spirits. Even though that's a melee priority target, you still attack it if there's nothing else up. For melee, it is spirit, then it is constructs if they happen to be nearby, and you don't have to go charging through everyone. And the same with essences. If they happen to be nearby, just attack it and just go do something on it. And then it's the boss last of all. Okay. Shared Fate. Another thing that's very similar to Heroic and Normal, just as an extra person. But being in Mythic, again, this is a source of wipes just because it does more damage. You've got to immediately move to them. Don't just think, oh, wait a couple of seconds, finish this spell, and then move to the person with Shared Fate. No. If you're linked, move immediately. I've seen people die to this sort of stuff. And the other thing is, just bear in mind, because there's a few people get linked, when you do arrive, I've done this wrong, when you do get there, stay and wait until they've definitely been broken out, because you might have one person who had a very long distance to travel, and they're just having to wait there. If it's not broken out within 10 seconds, then it's a lot of shadow damage going out, and it can easily kill people. And 10 seconds might sound like a lot, but one, it's doing damage all the time anyway, so the sooner you break them out, the less damage has been done. Two, you might misjudge the amount of time it takes to get over there, especially if you end up getting slowed by one of the Essence's shadow bots, or there's other things you need to try and avoid or something like that. Remember, you can get multiple things at once, like it's possible to get Shared Fate and like have a construct on you and all the rest of it. Or someone else might get Touch of Doom and they need to drop their Doom well out, but they need to break this thing first. So get to them quickly, immediately. Don't finish off casts. Same with anything else. All the mechanics and all the ads need dealing with here, and this is why people find this fight so hard. It's not actually that it is all that hard. It is quite hard, I think, for the people having to break people out of the souls, because there's a bit of timing required there. But by and large, this fight is difficult only because people do not focus on the priorities. Okay, so along comes Feast of Souls. Happy days! Oh, blow everything, burst the boss down. But if there are ads still up, you kill the ads first. Don't leave it to other people. Again, very common source of wiping. Sometimes the ads, if you've not been on top of them, or you've not been doing enough damage to them inside the stomach, the ads can still have quite a lot of health when the feast comes up. And because everyone's grouping up, because you take a lot of damage during Feast of Souls, incidental damage, so you need to be grouped up for the healing to get into the cooldowns, the healing tides, and spirit links, all that business. You've got to be stacked up, and they've got constructs fixated on people, so you've got to kill those ads off, all the ads, then you go on the boss. All right, and yes, you want to be saving your cooldowns and pots and things like that for these phases. You will expect on the first kill potentially to have 3 feasts. Not necessarily the third one would last a long time, but you would certainly have 2 full ones and a bit of a third one. You would expect. It occurs on 2-minute mark. It's a timed event, so there's nothing you can do between the feast that will change the timing of that at all. So if you've got 2-minute cooldowns, you can use them on the pull, but then save it for this. If you've got 3-minute cooldowns, you don't use them on the pull, you save it for this. And you, of course, you'd expect to use the ring at this point as well, and everything else, and heroism. Now, the other thing to note is corruption on Mythic doesn't just go away. So you instead of just the tanks collapsing the unstable souls before they get to the raid, as would have probably happened on normal and heroic, you need everyone to take one. So you need a sort of a rotation system of people taking them out. And they'll come from 3 different parts of the room, sort of like you could call it left, centre and back. Left, centre and right, sorry, but they'll all come from the back. And when it's your turn to go out and take one, you need to make sure you take it nice and early. You don't want to be letting it get to the raid at all, because that causes extra damage. We can do without that, because it causes shadow damage there. Everyone within 10 yards of the detonation. So nice and early, as soon as you're called to go and get it, or you know it's your turn to go and get it immediately. Try and come up with some sort of system where you're not going to have multiple people going for the same one. And usually you get 3 coming out at once, so have like in groups of 3, sort that out. But again, this will take a bit of practice, but you do need everyone to take one, and you need them to take it very quickly, because of course when you're away from the group, you're not under a barrier, you're not under a spirit link or anything else that might be reducing your damage, smoke bombs, all the rest of it. You might need a personal cooldown to protect you there. And the other thing is, if you run off and someone gets to there first with a speed increase, and then you've got to run, find another one, all the rest of it, you can be wasting a lot of time there. So show a bit of consideration and cooperate with each other. Make sure everyone gets one, and there we go. But Feast of Souls in all other ways is exactly the same as on normal or heroic. And effectively that's all there is to this fight. You just need to know what are the priorities. Don't be stacked so you're doing lots of AoE damage to each other. Focus on the adds and make sure you know what the priority of adds is, and make sure you are aware that the boss is at the bottom of those priorities. Make sure you know what you're doing inside. You don't tunnel vision anything. Make sure you can distinguish between getting doom and getting death, and you know where to go with each of those. And that's all there really is to this fight. The reason why people spend so long on it is because of this attitude, which is far too common in raiding, of focusing on personal DPS, which is anathema to killing the boss. Because literally on this fight, it's a classic case of, if you focus on your own personal DPS, you are screwing the raid over. And if you screw the raid over, you're increasing the chance of wipe. And you know, I absolutely guarantee once you've had a few pulls on it, fair enough, you need a good number of pulls for people to practice, for the people who are breaking out souls to practice that, and for other people to sort their position out. But after, let's say, a good night of pulls, I absolutely guarantee that every wipe after that, if you look at the logs, you will see someone who is not just failing, but deliberately doing something wrong. And I mean deliberately, because they're deliberately staying on the boss when they know that there's adds up there that they could help out on, or they're deliberately not running out with doom quickly enough, so they end up dropping the doom well too far in, or they, you know, taking too long to break out Shed Fate when they're linked to it, or something like that. I absolutely guarantee that is the case. And once people stop doing that, that is when you will kill the boss, and you will kill the boss a lot more quickly if everyone subscribes to the view that actually, do you know what, everyone is responsible for dealing with these mechanics, for dealing with these adds in a strict priority system, and it'll all go well. Okay, so see how you get on with that, and until next time, see you later.